It's often not thought about. If you looked at what you would do before you have a baby, or just what you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, we do so much. And that's just taking care of ourselves and our husbands, our partners, and our home. And you add a baby into that mix, and you have to let go of a lot of that stuff. And so rather than waiting until the baby is born and you're like stuck thinking like, oh my God, I haven't done this or that for the house, I teach moms to put their homes on autopilot.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mom Talks with Christa. We got another great episode for you today. Kallista Andersen from the new Mom Boss podcast was here and talking all about ways for prepping your home and putting it on autopilot before baby arrives. So if you are currently pregnant or expecting your second one, planning for a second baby, you must listen to this episode. She's got some amazing tips for you that you can start applying to your life today. And of course, stick around to the very end for our MomTales segment. This is when we read your responses to our questions that we post on social media. I always have so much fun reading them. So stick around for that. And without further ado, here's my interview with Kallista Andersen. I'm so excited to talk to you. I know we want to cover all kinds of topics, but just to get started, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I would love to. So my name is Kallista Andersen, and I am the founder of New Mom Boss. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a sec, but my background and my little bit about my personal life is I'm a mom of three. I am a wife, and my professional background is nursing. I'm a registered nurse and a certified lactation counselor. And I started New Mom Boss to help pregnant moms and moms in their postpartum season to just transition into new motherhood and prepare as much as they can so that they can enjoy that season with their babies.
Awesome. I love that. I love hearing the different stories of how moms kind of got into what they do. And I can tell like you put so much heart and drive into what you do. So where was that turning point for you where you're like, I want to help moms now because of what I've been through or because of what I've learned? What was that point for you?
Yes, like so many of us, the different businesses that we started, it usually comes because there's a gap, right? Or we've experienced something and we're like, why isn't this better for other people? And when we gain the experience, we want to share it with others. At least that's what happened for me. So I have felt called to help pregnant and postpartum mamas since I had my first daughter. Like I said, I'm a nurse. And actually, my husband's a doctor. So we have had experience before we became parents with pregnancy and birth. He even delivered a baby in his training, and I've been through like L&D and just, kind of had a peek into new parenthood in a medical background sense. And I had always wanted to be a mom. I'm pretty much a planner and organizer. So like I thought I was ready for my daughter. I was super excited to have her. And I had the Pinterest perfect nursery, washed all the clothes and all that stuff, right? And she came, and it was not what I expected. It was a lot hard. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard, but it was like 10 times harder than I expected it to be. The sleep deprivation was like nothing I had ever experienced. And we had trouble breastfeeding. So the first week of breastfeeding was a big challenge. I got a nipple injury. And luckily, I found a group in the first week and I sought help, and we were able to continue breastfeeding. But if I hadn't gotten the help I needed, I would have quit in the first week or so. And so I was, trying to get used to being a new mom for those first several weeks. And it wasn't until 2 months after having the baby, that's when the sleep deprivation set in. Because I think the first 8 weeks or 2 months, I was running off of adrenaline, and I thought, this is fine. Like I got this. And then 2 months in, it all caught up, and all the sleepless nights was just like, oh my God, I don't even know how I'm going to survive. And so, I got through that. But at 4 months, I found out I was pregnant again. And so I had a newborn, 4 months old, and here I am pregnant again. And I hadn't even slept much. And so also I was like, what? I need to get ready for the second baby. Like it can't be like this again. And so I really got to work. I wasn't even like celebrating. I almost cried actually.
Oh,
But yeah, so I figured out what I did that wasn't really serving me to get ready for the baby and what I could have done better. And so I did those things. And then my son came 9 months later, and it was a beautiful experience. I really got to bond with him. And I did that while juggling raising another. Well, she was a little top, a 1 year old. She was 13 months old when he was born. But it was still a really great experience, better than the first time, just 13 months earlier. And so that really struck this chord in me to like get other moms feeling the same way. You don't have to wait for the second time around to have a great experience. And so that's where it stemmed from.
oh, that's amazing. I love hearing that because you were kind of your own voice. You always talk about like your voice matters and like what you're feeling. And so you're kind of took it upon yourself to be like, I want it to be different this time around. So I'm going to do everything I can. So I'm sure there's lots of moms listening that are like, okay, either expecting their first or, expecting a second and saying, okay, that sounds amazing. How do I do that? So what were the biggest things that you did to make it almost better the second time around, to be more prepared and to have an overall better experience?
Oh gosh, I did so many things differently the second time. And, I just did it back then. But when I actually stopped and looked back and organized my process in my head and how I could help others, what I realized was there's these 5 areas that we can prepare before the baby arrives. And I call it my 5 S's, which is to prepare yourself, to prepare your significant other, to prepare your space, your skills, and your support. And you may do some of these when you're getting ready for your baby, or not, or you may do some of them and you're not aware, you're not doing the other things. And so that's what I've been doing since I started New Mom Boss, is kind of taking moms through that process, whether it's on a course or coaching, or I have a workshop that I open up every few months called prepping for postpartum workshop, and we go over the 5 S's in there as well. And we don't intentionally think about these 5 different categories that we can prepare ourselves for as part of preparing for the baby, because we're so focused on the baby shower and the baby registry. It's like all the gadgets is what's top of mind when we're pregnant. And then I would say after that, we focus on the birth, which is amazing and wonderful and it's so needed, because we need to know how we're going to give birth, right? And how to best do that for us, whatever avenue we choose to do that. And so that's definitely a must. But the thing is, the birth, which we place so much emphasis on, is only a 1 day event, right? It's an intense day, but it's only 1 day. And the postpartum time is months long, and we don't give it as much attention as it needs and deserves. And so that is that's my mission, is to change the way we prepare for babies by thinking past the birth and thinking about the postpartum period, because our system doesn't do that for us. Like our doctor's visits, we get between 17 and 20 doctor's visits or prenatal visits, and you get one postpartum visit. And it's usually a checkup of checking you down there, or incision if you have a C-section, and they send you on your way. There's no checking like how are things with your partner and breastfeeding and all the things that are happening, all the moving pieces in your home with a new baby.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of really great points. I mean, I know when people first get pregnant, it's all about the list, like you talked about, and it's like, how do I register for all these things? But at the end of the day, it's months long, the 4th trimester, as they call it. And that preparation is so, so important, like you talk about. And so you also talk about putting your home in autopilot before baby arrives. So what is this, and what are the steps that our listeners can do the same?
Yeah. So I love to teach about putting your home on autopilot. So that would fall under the preparing your space pillar. And it's often not thought about. If you looked at what you would do before you have a baby, or just what you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, we do so much. And that's just taking care of ourselves and our husbands, our partners, and our home. And you add a baby into that mix, and you have to let go of a lot of that stuff. And so rather than waiting until the baby is born and you're like stuck thinking like, oh my God, I haven't done this or that for the house, I teach moms to put their homes on autopilot, which means you're doing the minimal things so that you can focus on recovery after birth. You can focus on bonding with your baby and your partner and not worry about these other things. And so what is it? So that's just one thing about the space. And how you can start to do that is, first of all, if you're married and you have a partner, this requires some participation. It's not just going to be you, because or whoever it is that you live with. Maybe you have, I'm sorry about that. Maybe you have family living with you as well. They could be part of this preparation. And so I'll quickly take you through the steps I take, or the steps I teach, which is to first have a conversation with your partner about how things are going to change in the household, the roles, the dynamic, and the changes, who does what basically currently, and how that might change after the baby arrives. So designating and assigning the different roles you're going to take once the baby is born. And then take an inventory of all the things you both do, or whoever else is going to be involved, on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So you can have a running list for like a week and think of everything you may be doing. And now once you have your list, you'll want to go through it and see what you can take off your plate or what you can assign to somebody else. So if it's not urgent or necessary, or if it's something that can be put off for a few months until you're out of the postpartum season, take it off your list. And then once you've done that, you would want to automate whatever you can on that list. So a good thing to automate is paying for bills. You can put things on auto pay, which I don't necessarily like to do normally, but I'll do it for like 3 months just so it's one less thing I have to worry about, is like paying bills. And automate maybe groceries or something that could be on subscription delivered to your home, and like household items, that kind of thing. So that is the next step, is automation. And then the last step would be to delegate. So whatever's left on the list that you didn't delete, you haven't automated, you can delegate to either your partner or hire somebody to do whatever it is, cleaning the house or walking the dogs if you have dogs. Just anything you can take off your plate even more, so that your list is either, nothing's on your plate to do when the baby is born, or you'll have just a few things to do. And so that's how you can automate ahead of time and not have to worry about these things when the baby arrives.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, prepping ahead of time like that sounds so good, because it's, instead of waiting until after the baby's born, there's going to be so many things that come up that you're not necessarily planning for or expecting. So that's a great tip. And so when it comes to, things that maybe moms forget to do, or, aren't as important, what are some like common mistakes moms tend to make when it comes for, preparing or not preparing for baby?
Yeah, I would say that most moms, especially first-time moms, think they can wing it. And, because being a mom is so natural, right? Like the mother instinct is natural, like our mama bear protectiveness is natural. So you might think that everything else will be natural too. And it's really not that natural, you know, and it is, I like to say, the messy middle. The fourth trimester is that messy middle from the time you give birth to the fifth trimester, which is the next stage after the postpartum period. So that fourth trimester is really a transitional time. And I think we underestimate how challenging it can be, even with the utmost preparation. Like, it's still challenging. I'm not saying if you prepare everything that it'll be a breeze. It's still hard. You know, your body's not meant to not have sleep, but we can do it, right? It's still going to be challenging, but it will be so much more smooth, and you'll be able to bond with your baby more if you take all these other things off your plate. For instance, doing the autopilot preparation. There's so many other things we can do, but, you know, just really not underestimating the challenge that it's going to be. Because if you do, you'll just, I mean, I experienced that myself. I thought it was not going to be as hard as it was. And I was in shock at how hard it was with my first. And I wasn't even working that time. I took some time off from nursing, being a nurse. And I was like, oh, I'm not even going to go back to work for a while. So it can't be that hard. You know, I won't have that pressure. And yeah, it was still hard. And the other thing I would say is part of the underestimating is that we wait for the baby to be born to learn things like breastfeeding. You know, a lot of new moms, their hospital class may or may not have a little breastfeeding education. And if it does, it's, you know, maybe like 20 minutes of the class or less. It's not a whole class on breastfeeding. And I think most moms wait till the baby is in their arms to learn about it, when there's so much you can learn ahead of time that is not the practical, you know, how to actually position the baby and get a good latch. Like, you need your baby to do that. But just the breastfeeding basics and what to do or what to expect, the common breastfeeding issues that can come up and how to handle them. So I think that's the most common mistake first time moms make.
Mm-hmm. And so you talk about like the 5 S's, so 5 different kind of areas to focus on. If a mom's listening now, and let's say she's due pretty soon now, maybe like in a month or two or sooner, so she doesn't have a lot of time to prepare, what main things should she start to focus on, or how can she kind of prioritize so she's getting a good preparation kind of going?
Right, like a well-balanced.
Yes.
So not just the space, because when I say preparing for the space, a lot of people think it's just the nursery, and it's so much more than that. So in the 5 S's, I would just say it is also part of the postpartum plan that I like to talk about, because we hear so much about the birth plan. And, you know, do you have your birth plan yet? Make sure you bring it to the hospital or to wherever you're having your baby. And it's great. That's really nice to have. But how about your postpartum plan? What's your plan for yourself and your partner when you get home from the hospital? You know, you're not sent home with a schedule or a to-do list or a manual, as they say, right? Like, parenting doesn't come with a manual, but you yourself can create this quote unquote manual or blueprint or plan for yourself after the baby is born. So going through the 5 S's, you know, what do you want for yourself? So in my workshop, I give a PDF, a blueprint, but you could just do this on your own. Just draw like 4 lines. So there's 5 sections, and the first section is yourself. What do you want your postpartum to look like? Maybe, because we don't even think about it really, right? Like, we just think it's going to be fine. So what is your expectation for yourself after the baby is born? And you want to check that too. Is that realistic? Right? Like, do you think you're just going to bounce back? And the bounce back I think it's on Instagram a lot. You know, people post their best pictures with filters and everything, and it's not the reality after you have your baby. And so just becoming more realistic about what it's going to be like, and how your body is not going to feel like your body, even though you had your baby already. You'll still look and feel pregnant for several weeks. and that's normal, right? So just kind of journaling things about yourself, what you want, and how you can take care of yourself and support yourself. And then the next section would be your significant other. Most couples don't talk about the changes after having a baby. And the Gottman Institute, which is Dr. Gottman, and they have lots of research around relationships and marriage. They say that in the first 7 years, relationships and marriages the survey said that their satisfaction in their relationship plummets after having a baby. And I think it's, again, the expectations. Like, you think your relationship is going to be the same, but how can it be when there's a new baby in the mix 24/7, especially the first several months? Like, the baby is so helpless, can't do anything on their own. And you're literally, like, the first few weeks, you're just trying to keep them alive, right? Like, when you're doing it for the first time, always checking on them. And that can put a lot of strain on the relationship. And we're so focused on the baby that we put our relationships on the back burner. And then we put ourselves on the back burner too, because all our energy is towards the baby. And it's natural. If you're not intentional and you don't think about it ahead of time, we can all fall in that rut. And so, just paying attention to your relationship. And then the space, I talked about the autopilot. The nursery is easy. Everyone knows how to put together a nursery. And it doesn't really matter which thing you buy of what, like which blanket or swaddle you buy is really such a small decision in the big scheme of things. And that's where I would love for the pregnant moms to just take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And then skills, breastfeeding, I mentioned also. Start learning about breastfeeding now if you're pregnant, and the pumping and what to expect. And time management is going to be a whole new thing. Like, we think of time management more of like at work or business or working out or that kind of thing. Time management is on a whole new level when you have a new baby. There's barely even time to take a shower or eat or do the basic daily activities that we take for granted. And not to scare anybody, but it's not forever, but it is the reality for the first several weeks as you're getting used to, having a newborn. And then the last piece, the last S, is support, and setting that support up before the baby arrives. And there are so many different things you may or may not need, and knowing who you can go to for the different specialties in the postpartum period and looking them up and seeing if they might be a good fit for you. Just so you know who you would go to if you need it. You may not need them, and that would be fine. But people like pelvic floor specialists, a lactation consultant, a therapist, this other support like family support and work support, just any kind of help you may or may not need. It's easiest and best to do it while you're pregnant, so you're not figuring it out in the postpartum period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great too, because like we were kind of just saying, like once the baby comes, things are going to change. And so it's hard at that point to kind of go backwards and re-plan for things. So preparing as much as possible, those are all like really great areas. And I've heard about, therapy too. Like if you already have a therapist, kind of keeping them up to date, because then you're already talking with someone, once you have the baby and you're kind of already comfortable being vulnerable and talking about your feelings, when you said, like you kind of become last on the list once a baby comes. So those are all, really, really great points. So then when it comes to like, let's say moms are listening now and they're kind of in that hustle and bustle right now. And they're like, oh, I wish I could go back in time. I did not prepare as well as I should have. What can they do today, this week, or this month to kind of get their head on straight and just allow themselves to feel a little more prepared for the following week?
My biggest tip, it doesn't have to be in the postpartum period, but it's really nice to do before you have the baby, or if you've already had the baby and you're kind of in that fog and you're not feeling like yourself, is to schedule things. So I usually tell my pregnant moms to schedule things ahead of time so that you don't forget about it. And the things I mean or I encourage to schedule is your first date night after you have the baby. So whatever your due date is, or if you already have your baby, maybe schedule it 4 weeks from now or the due date, or 8 weeks or whatever. You may not even know what you're going to do yet, but at least it's in the calendar. And as the date approaches, you can start planning for childcare or what it is you're actually going to do. Or if it is like a dinner date, maybe make that reservation so that you're committed and you have something to look forward to. And I would also encourage the same for your social life, like having a girls' day out or a girls' night out scheduled a month in advance or 2 months in advance. And typically, I mean, that's how long it takes for most groups of friends now. When you're an adult, like trying to line up everybody's schedule is like, it takes forever, right? So yeah, just schedule something nice for you and your girlfriends or family. If you have extended family you want to spend time with, it gives you something to look forward to. And it also just makes it happen. It's much more likely to happen when it's in your calendar and you don't go 2, 3, 4 months and then you're like, oh my God, we totally need a date night, or we haven't seen each other with your friends, for a long time. And so I love to just book things, a massage, like whatever it is that you like to do but you can't do right now, just put it in the calendar.
I love that. It gives you something to kind of look forward to. So it's not like, a lot of times the postpartum months can be you're playing catch up a lot of the times, or you feel like you're kind of running around like a chicken with your head cut off, kind of just doing the things. So having different things set aside, even if you can't necessarily go somewhere right now, even if it's just like a FaceTime coffee date or something where you can like schedule something to connect with other people. It's a great suggestion. So what are your other like favorite tips that you can tell new moms that just about this, whether this period, like maybe they're about to be a new mom. So what are your like go-to tips for new moms?
I actually have a new one that I'm like teaching and encouraging new moms, which I think is brilliant. And I wish I had it when I had my babies. So for the postpartum moms, especially the first few weeks, a great thing to do is to have a whiteboard or one of those big post-it papers you could stick on the wall by your room. And you'll want to write how many hours of sleep you got that night. Okay. And then also what you want, like what is your one wish for that day that's realistic? Like, and pretty much basic things are like what you really want, right? So that will give your partner and whoever is in your home an idea of what your night was like. Because, communication is so important and everybody knows that. But when you're exhausted and you're healing and you're in recovery, you're not always in that, oh, I need to check in with my partner, or maybe they forget to check in with you. And so having this like physical, tangible thing that everybody can see, and you can see for yourself too. If you had a horrible night, if the baby was really fussy that night, you can see for yourself and remind yourself, oh yeah, it was just that kind of night. I'm not going to be my best today. And that's okay. We're allowed to have really extra tired days. But this whiteboard or paper helps our partner or whoever is helping us get a better idea of what we're going through. And so what you want for the day could be there too. Like I have a client right now she's in the postpartum period, like a few weeks in, and she's also writing a book. And so she needs to find time to write her book. And so I said, you could put that on there, like 1 hour, maybe, and your partner or whoever, a family member can come and they know that. And it also tells you like what you want to focus on that day outside of all your new mom duties, because that also keeps us, we're in a fog, and it kind of helps us keep a little bit of ourselves, and it grounds us, and we're not just all mommy stuff, which is wonderful. And it's such a beautiful time to bond with your baby, but we also need something that's just for us. And so something for you that you want that day. So those two things I would say just put on there. And then whatever else you can think of that might help you with your communication with your partner.
Awesome. Great tips. I love that. And so, of course, as you mentioned earlier, you are the host of the podcast, The New Mom Boss. So tell us more about the podcast and, where everyone can find it and what kind of topics you cover and all that good stuff.
The New Mom Boss podcast comes out every Thursday. So there's an episode every week. And I cover everything during pregnancy and postpartum and early childhood years. And I have tons of guests, different specialties. And, I think the best thing about having all these different guests is that you get an idea about different things that you would have never thought of yourself. Like I have learned so much from my guests, and I'm like, I wish I did that, or I almost want to have another baby so I could do it a different way, and incorporate different things. So yeah, it's really focused on pregnancy and postpartum. And, maybe you don't, whatever episode you listen to, maybe it's not for you, like placenta encapsulation, but just being, that's just an example. And I wish I did it. But anyway, that's just an example of like, oh, that is around, that exists, and you can make an informed decision whether you want to do it or not. And I think that's like the beauty of hearing from a lot of different experts, is just broadening your vision. And maybe you do want to add something to your pregnancy or postpartum experience. And, you don't have to go past that and look back and say, I wish I did that. So that's the New Mom Boss podcast.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's it's similar to like what we say here too, is like, there's so much like mom shaming and so much like guilt and so much like, well, I do it this, like that comparison. And so what we always say here is like, we're showcasing so many different like ways of parenting, so many different ways of being a mom, or what works for different families, to kind of like help with that, because everyone's going to do things kind of differently. Because you could say you're going to do it this way, but something comes in and causes it to go a little bit differently. So just kind of, I think sharing stories helps with just kind of understanding different people's way of living their life,
Exactly. Yeah, you get different perspectives. And yeah, exactly. I had a plan to parent a certain way. Like I wanted to do attachment parenting. And then I found out that wasn't going to work for me. And, even with sleep training, there's like like people who are against it and people who are for it. And, just hearing both sides, or just all sides. Like sometimes there's more than two, and just picking what works for you. And it may or may not work for you, but you can plan or try it and then reevaluate. And, that's a lot of what parenting is, and being a new mom is constantly changing things and making sure, or changing things to make it work for you. Because there's a lot of transitions.
Yeah, ever evolving and taking what you want, leaving what you don't, and you can always change your mind. And yeah, definitely. Awesome. So I always like to end these interviews with fun thinking questions. So if you could have a billboard made today where you could share one tip with moms everywhere, I know you've shared so many tips already today, but just one tip for a billboard, what would you have it say?
Oh gosh, a billboard. I would say find your thing and keep it with you through being a mom, whatever that is. Don't lose yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great reminder, because I think so many times moms lose themselves and kind of forget who they were or what their interests were before. So having that, even just that one thing, I think that's really powerful. Awesome. And of course, where can everyone follow you, find your podcast, and see all the good things you have to share?
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you again, Christa, for having me. It was so fun sharing about preparing for postpartum. And I can be found on all the usual platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and it's the same across the board. So New Mom Boss on Instagram. And then the podcast is called the New Mom Boss Podcast. Website is newmomboss.com. So it's pretty easy to remember. It's all the same.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Kallista. It was awesome talking with you. And I know so many moms are going to love these tips because they're awesome, just awesome tips. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Krista.
All right, guys, it's time for our Mom Tales of the Week. And we're doing one of our favorite threads that we seem to have on social media. And that is Tell Us Your Mom Confession. Anytime we post Tell Us Your Mom Confession, the thread goes wild. I'm telling you, like 4 times the responses in our Facebook group. And I think it's a lot of fun just to kind of throw it out there and just kind of see who relates. So here we go. Okay, number 1, Ashley R. I knew my son pooped while nursing him, so I handed him off to dad, afterwards asking him to burp him because I had to go to the bathroom. Hey, you knew what you were doing, and hey, if you need a little break, it's okay. It can be dad's turn. It's fine. No harm, no foul. Number 2, Kindred R. I'm pregnant with baby number 2 and can't stand smells and extremely nauseous. I had to change my 16-month-old son and puked on him. Oh no. Well, hopefully it wasn't like all over and you could just clean it out quickly. That's got to be really tough though, especially if you're very nauseous and if you can't hold it in. Oh my gosh. Well, it'd be a funny story to tell him later when he's grown up. Number 3, Brittany G. I haven't showered this week. I've used a wipe every day to wipe my lady bits and armpits. LOL. I know it's gross, but it's been a week from hell. Hey, you do what you gotta do. There's no shame in that. And you know what? We shower too much in the US anyways. You don't need to shower every day or multiple times a week. You're fine. You do what you gotta do, girl. Number 4, JCH. I'm 11 weeks postpartum and I'm having the hardest time working because I worried about my son all day and miss him so much that my mental health is all over the place. I also just like being home. That's really tough, and I'm sure there are so many moms that can relate to you. So finding this community and reaching out is amazing because, like I said, you're not alone. And the first thing is acknowledging how you feel. And so talking about it and talking with other people and seeing if there's a way around it or something you can do to make yourself feel better or feel not as lonely when you are working. But that's really tough no matter what. Number 5, Sarah M. We ate McDonald's twice this week. You know what? When I read that, I just hear we got 2 awesome meals this week because you know what? When I was a kid and we got McDonald's, that was like bomb. That was amazing. So your kids are having an amazing week. You're taking care of them. You're feeding them. I don't see anything wrong with it. You do you. Number 6, Anonymous. I sometimes call my kids Richard when they're being They think it's funny. I do the same to my husband. He doesn't think it's funny. Still don't know why the name Richard and go hand in hand. You know what? That's a nice way of you just expressing yourself. You're being kind. You're just calling them Richard. It's fine. And it helps you kind of feel like, you know what? It makes you like laugh at the little things, but you can kind of just be like, all right, you're being Richard. Like, come on, Richard. Like, let's get it together. All right. Number 7, Cheyenne L. My oldest does not eat actual food for anything. So he doesn't have the healthiest diet because I just feed him what he will eat. Usually ramen, hot dogs, nuggets, and fruit. You know what? It's food. He's eating what he will eat. And some kids are just picky and there's nothing you can do about it, literally. Like I've seen it firsthand. There are some kids, they're all raised the same and some will just be picky. There's really nothing you can do. So at least he's eating some stuff and hey, he's getting protein in there. He's getting some carbs. He's getting some fruit. It's all good. And for some, it's just a phase and they grow out of it. Some people are picky their whole life. You know what? You're doing your best and you're doing awesome. So it's okay. Number 8, Anonymous. My 3-month-old loves sensory videos on YouTube. When he's upset, it calms him. I know a lot of moms would shame me for screen time, but he never goes over 20 minutes. Again, you know what works best for your family. And it's so easy for other people to look at you and judge you for what you do, but no one knows exactly what goes on in your family, and no one knows what works best. And it's a sensory video. You're not just letting him watch just anything. It's things that are good for him, and you're limiting the time. Again, you just gotta do you. It's so easy for people to judge because they don't do the same thing, or they would never do that, but you know what? You have to focus on your lane and just do what works best for you. So, awesome. Great confessions, everyone. Like I said, I had threads of like 250 plus. These are people's favorites because I think it gives you a space to share. And you know what I want to say to that? If you feel like these kind of posts excites you, maybe be more vulnerable. Get a journal and write stuff down, vent, because it's so good to get stuff out there. Find a community where you can feel accepted and like a part of something when you're kind of in the thick of it, or when you just want to laugh, or you just want to like connect with someone. It's so powerful. It's so important. And that's what these answers and these threads show me, is that people just want to connect in difficult times, in moments where you feel maybe kind of low, or you're like a quote unquote bad mom, because none of these are bad moms. You're not a bad mom for your choices. We all just do the best to get by that day, and that's okay. So I hope that inspired you to share your hashtag mom confessions, or whatever you want to call them. And thanks for joining me this week, and I will see you next week for a new episode. Hey guys, if you found this or any episode of Mom Talks with Christa helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share it with your friends. We release new videos every single Wednesday, and our new podcast is out every single Thursday. So lots of different ways you can catch us. And of course, if you're not following us on our socials, go ahead and follow us there. We've got tons of new content for you every single day. And finally, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you're doing a great job. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.